Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Gamer Entitlement articles by various journos in the gaming press. This time from VG247. Game developers, it's time to stop listening to the fans. And by fans, he means entitled fans, because those are the bad fans who don't know what they're talking about or don't know anything about game design or development. This is a pretty loaded article, as you might imagine. Even the first sentence, don't get mad, there's a bit of hyperbole in that headline, meaning he knows this is pretty much clickbait. And of course, the thumbnail is our boy over here who's about to jump a planet or whatever he's doing. It's July 2019 and we're still talking about this. It's just like, oh, could you give it a rest? Bioware has a lot to answer for. Has a lot to answer for. This is the present tense. It's like it's 2019. Yeah, they still do. Mass Effect 3 feels like ground zero for toxic fan entitlement. Here we go, the toxic fan entitlement. I still don't know what toxic anything means. And toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, toxic fans. Is it damage over time? Am I spreading a meme? Like what's toxic about it? Am I aggressive? Like I don't get it. I can't be angry and be a fan and feel entitled that I want an actual ending to a story? No. I'm sure the developer was just trying to do the right thing. They all had good intentions. This is the defense? Really? But it changed the ending of its game due to negative feedback, bending its creative vision to pander to the baying masses. Every sequel, every story is a form of pandering. I sort of talked about that in the previous video where I was saying, well, you're pandering to someone for some reason. Writing is all about pandering anyway, or writing a certain story within a certain category, so genre is a form of pandering. But because the game is so bad, this is not a small like fringe group. This was a lot of people. This was millions of people, maybe not all talking at the same time, but communicating their displeasure about the ending of Mass Effect 3. And yes, they changed the ending, but they broke a lot of other things in the ending. So yeah, they gave you some more PowerPoint slides, but they didn't really explain the ending. They didn't really explain the Star Child. They didn't explain how all this makes any goddamn sense. This rarely happens in any other medium. Sure, you could point at Sonic movie, changing his appearance over criticism, but it's the video game crowd once again. Okay. If you think the first trailer of Sonic made Sonic look good, that's your taste. But it looks very little to what the video game character is. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. I mean, we're expecting some changes here and there. Like maybe the eyes aren't fused together as one giant eyeball because that's just weird. But get it close. Get it close as possible. It's really the point of live action. Make it realistic, obviously, but get it close to what it's supposed to be. Elsewhere, people have petitioned to have the last season of Game of Thrones remade, but HBO would never do that because it's absurd. No, it's not. They had plenty of money, and they wanted D&D to make more HBO Game of Thrones. So it would have been a huge production, amount of value, amount of money, but HBO was ready to sign that check. And we all know how bad Season 8 was in Game of Thrones. And I didn't even watch past Season 4, and I know how bad it was. Just the outcry alone. And the arguments therein. It's just bad, lazy, crap writing. Like it or not, the vast majority of video game players just do not understand game development. You could say that about anyone in life. The vast majority of this group does not understand the thing that made the thing they like. The vast majority of people who watch movies don't know how movies are made. That's true. If a game doesn't run well, it's bad optimization. That's true. There's other reasons, but that's a perfectly valid answer. If there's a lack of features, it isn't down to development constraints and deadlines. It's lazy developers. It's also lazy project managers. It's lazy designers who don't know how to do scope properly, don't know how to do budgeting, don't know how to do planning. And I'm a guy who actually went to school for software as well as video game design and development, so I know enough to know how you can make a project. Obviously, I don't know enough to do a AAA budget and planning with all the PMs and all the organizations, but it's the same idea, theoretically. That's not a dig at the gaming audience. It's just that video games are a complex chimera of publisher goals, developer goals, and the realities of working with an ever-shifting vision. This is not right. The vision should remain exactly the same. It's the reality of the project that has to change. That's why things are cut to get things out the door. So it's like, oh, this feature is not 100%, cut it. You know, if it's 80%, cut it. It's not working, it's too buggy, blah, 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 whatever. Cut it. Nothing to do with the vision. It's the actual reality that this thing is not ready for production for all kinds of reasons. It's like molding a jar of clay on a roller coaster. That's an interesting analogy. So you're on a roller coaster and the roller coaster goes up and down and you're spinning your pot. I'm like, okay. Games are a broken mess right up until launch, not necessarily. When the roller coaster finally comes to a halt and the clay stops flopping around, like one of those car dealership balloons. Okay. Okay. You know, I've seen alphas and betas of much smaller titles that did not change the final build of the game by much. So it's all about the scale and people understanding that scale and what they can accomplish within a year or 2 years or 5 years or whatever. Things are often cut or changed. Some things don't work. Yep. Some things work better. Yep. Nobody wants to release a bad game. It happens all the time. Nobody wants the ending of their critically acclaimed trilogy to be ill-received. Nobody wanted a game, a trilogy, that had your choices matter throughout the series, lead up to nothing, or colored or palette swapped endings. That's not like, I shouldn't have to quote Casey Hudson on this, but we all know how bad that was for the lies that were told. It was essentially lying to the audience. You often see video game fans come to the defense of game developers if certain story beats in a game are criticized. Okay, sure, and vice versa. Come on the offensive of game developers if certain story beats, like Deus Ex Machinas. They don't know how to use them, even though that's the premise of their game. For example, let's say Mass Effect 2. I would recommend to the Bioware saying, hey, you want to use Deus Ex Machinas? Use an intermediary. So the Deus Ex Machina is still present, but not literally there. And they have the collectors. You're like, great, you guys did it. See how it worked out. And it's like they read the first line of my recommendation. They forgot the rest. It's like, yeah, well, we'll have intermediaries, but then we'll have the actual Deus Ex Machina talk through them. It's like, no. It's missing the point. Criticism is just that, pointing out that something could be better. Well, criticism is finding, to me at least, criticism is the whole point of discovering meaning. And that meaning could be good, could be bad, pretty, ugly. It could be zero. It could be no meaning. And what to do with that? What is the value of that criticism? It depends upon the person listening to it. It's not asking for something to be changed. That's right. Could be anything. It's a talking point, a hopefully deeper reading of a game. Usually that's, in most critics, a projection as opposed to a understanding, because they have their own biases and opinions, as opposed to actually looking at the thing and going, oh, this is what's there. This is the meaning. This is the only meaning you can derive from it without doing your own biases or projections. So it's like, what flavor of criticisms are we talking about here? Yet when a critic points out issues with the handling of certain themes, okay, themes, sure, that would be a literary critique. A portion of the audience cries censorship. What? Which? I don't. What is it? Censorship? Who? When I critiqued Bioware, I don't want them censored. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Who wanted Bioware censored after the ending of Mass Effect 3? Which critic? And how does that relate to themes? Am I telling Bioware I want you to be censored from using those themes so you don't make an ass of yourself? What? Then they go off and create petitions to get games changed. So I create videos to get games changed, or to tell people that this game is crap or this ending is crap because of XYZ. So what? You make a blog post about game developers not trying, you should stop listening to your fans after it's been, 5-6 years? How does that make you any different? Part of the issue here is how our industry field feeds into this entitlement. Okay, whether it's PlayStation saying it's for the players, that's just a marketing thing, or it's Xbox head Phil Spencer saying stuff like games and gamers together now have the sheer magnitude to be a significant unifying force in the world. They are. It's the biggest entertainment phenomenon of humanity so far, and it will continue to be so for a long, long time. Whatever that means, our industry goes out of its way to say the customer is always right. That's true. The customer is always right, whether we're talking about video games or otherwise. Then he has some point about Metal Gear, which is not really relevant. Elsewhere in the bad place, some gamers actually petitioned Obama. Okay, we're going to skip that because that's silly. Then there's Mass Effect Andromeda. Okay, back to Bioware, of course. A game taken down by GIFs. The GIFs exist because of Mass Effect Andromeda, not the other way around. Mass Effect Andromeda was its own worst enemy. Development focus was on creating worlds. Yes, dynamically generated worlds, and they did that for so long until they realized they couldn't do it, so they cut it. It's not a problem with vision or scope, it's a problem with we just can't do it. And learning how to use an entirely new engine that isn't well suited to RPG development. Well, whose fault is that? You're going to blame EA for all that too? No, they worked on it. They said we can do it, and they screwed up. Plus, they had a previous game they worked on, Dragon Age Inquisition, which also was, it sold well, but I wouldn't say it was technically amazing. Didn't really do anything new. And it was an RPG. So they have really no excuse, at least Bioware does, for not delivering on the things they wanted to do. Laziness? Possibly. Bad planning? Definitely. Bad leadership? Definitely. Scope creep? Possibly. All sorts of factors went into this. As such, the facial animation suffered and people took the piss in GIFs. It could have been some other aspect of development. It could have been the level design. It could have been the car mechanic. It could have been all sorts of things. It just happened to be this. Back in the day, it was a given that RPGs didn't look as nice as other games because of the scope. Possibly. Nowadays, everything looks nice because developers want their games to look good in screens. What? That's just because graphic technology has gotten better. We have better animators. It's easier to make something look and sound good than it is to make a game. That's why you say that, this movie looked great, but the storyline sucked. Or sounded great because they hired a really good musician. Same with games. Hire a really good bunch of animators and modelers and musicians and sound guys, which are sort of separate from gaming half the time. And then the actual programmers have to make sense of all this and make an actual game, and that's where the complexity lies in. Rather than communicate what makes the game special, well, again, that's scope creep, bad planning, bad design, and people not understanding the engine, all sorts of things. Bioware's next game, Anthem, looked incredible. Okay. At the expense of everything else. So he's admitting the game sucked. Okay. It appeared to be a direct reaction to the negative feedback. No. Anthem didn't suck because of negative feedback. Anthem sucked before it was released. Those viral gifs of goofy... Oh, jeez. What kind of what argument is this? And if you look at these two comparisons, all you have is slightly different shaders, I guess. Hard to say. They've taken away some of the makeup. They've fixed the eyes. I mean, eyes are some of the most important things when you're talking about making a simulation or a drawing or anything else. When you're trying to communicate emotion and human believability, it's really all about the eyes, the eyebrows, and the lips, or the shape and angle of the lips. So deer in headlights, kind of terrifying, not like a mannequin. You got the darkness. You got some softness to the eyes there. The lighting isn't so crisp. It's a lot more subdued. The makeup is decreased. I don't know why. That's important. Eyelashes are pretty similar. I mean, it's very important when you get those talking Dr. Paul Ekman heads to look actual real, because that's the study of human anatomy. You have to get it working right or not at all. uncanny valley creeps in. There's all sorts of factors. So you would think Bioware had figured that out, the first Mass Effect, but it took 4 to say, oh yeah, we should probably go back to the drawing board. Definitely, yeah, it's all because of criticism, sure. Look at any online game community, or any fandom really, and there's always someone complaining about how the character isn't strong enough. KOTOR 1 and 2, I wouldn't say that, just because of the design of the character, the voiceless antagonist or protagonist. It was designed to be that way. Should they be strong? I mean, with Shepard, he or she was technically strong, but not in terms of storytelling. There wasn't really anything fundamental about that as a Shepard as a character. So, I mean, what is he talking about strong? What aspect of character strength is he referring to? Or how the character who can counter their hero is too strong? Really? People argue about the antagonist being too strong? Huh. Did they argue that Darth Vader wasn't strong enough? Or was like, oh, the Empire is too big? Like, really? I mean, I would argue that the villain, the main villain, the human villain in Mass Effect 3, the Elusive Man, was way too strong because it came out of nowhere. That was like just bad storytelling. So we can make arguments for that, but we have evidence and reason to do so. There will be dozens of posts about how their favorite weapon doesn't do enough damage. Okay, never talking about gameplay. But that's an issue of balance. So maybe he's talking about people who don't take that detail necessary or clear enough, because there is actual arguments to be made for people who talk about balance or who talk about lore. Let's say a game that should be like a nuclear explosion. It doesn't do that. You're like, oh, okay. Or why the game is showing us that certain weapons called a cane and certain ships in the space world can destroy their enemy, but no one clues into that. Say, oh yeah, why are we pursuing all these other avenues of weaponry when we have given solutions? Or how a weapon is op. Yeah, that happens all the time. So there will also be another player somewhere typing out the exact opposite. Okay, so there's people with differing opinions on balance, gameplay, storytelling. Yeah, people are like that. What's the point? These people aren't professional game developers. So what? Are their arguments right or wrong? That's all that matters. Are they right or are they wrong? Or is it just a matter of their opinion and their emotion? And then there's a whole issue of rhetoric. Is it just they make good arguments, but their evidence is poor? So that has nothing to do with being a professional game developer. And it wouldn't matter even if you worked on Mass Effect or any other game and made arguments therein. It would not matter. What matters is, are they right or are they wrong? Does the evidence match up with what they're saying? And they just want to make their very narrow experience of a game better for them, not for everyone else. That is in cases where games are very good and you criticize the game saying, it would be even better if you could do this maneuver, or it could track this stat. It's like the icing on top. And that's a very rare instance where you have such beautiful games that were designed so well. It's like, oh, you know what? If they even went further with their amazing game design, you could do that. It's very rare where you'll have like a first-person shooter pro talk about making obviously they have a very narrow experience, but it's a very specialized experience. So they would know what makes a good first-person shooter and then say, oh, this is such an amazing new random experience, but it sucks here. It's very rare to get these sorts of discussions going for something positive. But I don't see the problem with it being negative, especially when you're a professional and you're critiquing something which just came out and it doesn't live up to par. Mass Effect series has never been very good at its gameplay. It does not compare to other games on the marketplace. And everyone knows that. And you can cite, oh, well, Mass Effect 2 tightened up the gameplay. It's like, yes, but it's still pretty weak in comparison to what made what makes a third-person shooter work, what makes a cover shooter work. It's pretty bare bones. Game balancing for an online shooter is far more complex than toggling things on for the sake of it. Yeah, it is complex, but we're not talking about Fortnite. We're talking about a single-player game. And balance for guns is like, look at all the shooters out there. Look at Anthem. Do you think they know what they were doing with Anthem? Of course not. And is that a narrow view of point to take for a critic of Anthem who knows shooters? You go, yeah, this is pretty much garbage. Here's like 24 reasons why. Look at how Fortnite constantly pipes in new weapons and zaps them off because they're too disruptive. So that's what you do in multiplayer online games. You disrupt the meta. You switch things up. You want the game to evolve. That's how you do it. You add something new, you see if it works. If it doesn't, you get rid of it. You can't just tweak and see what happens. That's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what League of Legends does. They test it, they put it in beta, they go, oh, yeah, this is great. They put it live, and it's like, oh, it sucks. They get more feedback, they tweak it, they change it, they eliminate it, they reinvent characters every other year. That's how you keep things fresh. That's normal, at least as far as we've seen. Especially if your game is seriously played at a competitive level. So what? League of Legends does it? All sorts of MOBAs do it? How can you filter anything usable that your actual experts haven't already considered from all this noise? Testing. What is the argument here? This is normal. Like, does this guy even know how game development works? Has he played League of Legends? Has he played these online games where they're constantly changing things? My point is you can never please everyone. Really, that was your point? Okay. There's a quote that's often attributed to Henry Ford around the dawn of the commercial motor vehicles. What? People are generally afraid of change. These are generic statements. He's trying to tie this all back into AAA game dev. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was one of the first people to laugh at Microsoft's vision of the original Xbox One. Digital only, online only, the cloud. Okay. How does this relate to Mass Effect and storytelling and critique? What on earth were they talking about? Yet now in 2019, almost all my games are digital. Okay, so you're admitting you were biased and ignorant, and now you're enlightened? How does that make the critique of certain narrow-minded fans bad or wrong? Again, it doesn't... Like, if you were critiquing the Xbox One saying digital only back in the day, what were your arguments? What was your evidence? Did you realize that people actually wanted digital downloads as opposed to all kinds of clutter in their rooms of like their game libraries? Some people wanted that. What was wrong with that? The rise of crowdfunded games, like he's just jumping topics. This is his last paragraph. The rise of crowdfunded games has only made this community-driven development more prominent. What's wrong with community-driven game development? What? The community wants something. Someone goes out there, kickstarts something, and makes it. Like the latest Igavania game, Bloodstained. People wanted the next Castlevania. He delivered. What was wrong with that? Yeah, it doesn't always work out, but that's the risk you take. What stretch goals do you want? How should we shape your game to suit you? The gamers. Exactly. Whether it's the million or so people who crowdfund your game, or whether it's the game dev team, they're still gamers who want that product to be made. It's just on a larger scale. You get better feedback with more people, with more eyeballs looking at what you're doing. I think it's time our industry moved away from this mindset. What? How has it ever moved away? When did it, what? If it moves away from listening to feedback, especially crowdfunded games, it'll never make anything. No one will want it. You can't crowdfund a game no one wants. And started thinking about what we're going to replace our horses. Oh boy. What is your point, buddy? we have discovered through the controversies of game development or game releases what doesn't work. Bad endings, bad storytelling, poor launches. Anthem, Andromeda, Mass Effect 3. Bioware has been the leading edge for showing us what not to do. So, thank you, Bioware, for being our space monkey. It's really opened up our eyes as to what. I'm not going to read the comments here, but oh geez, guys, this is really sad. I don't know where this guy has been for the past 5 years, but clearly he's got something up his ass against fans and their opinions. And instead of actually addressing the opinions and critiquing those, he's just saying, "Yeah, we should stop listening to people who actually buy these games for whatever dumb reason he came up with, which is just a gobbledygook of different ideas. Like every paragraph is a different idea. It's like, dude, you're just after lunch." Anyway, yeah, this game is not going away. The controversy surrounding these games are not going away. And we're just going to have to live with that. Thanks, guys, for listening. Have yourself a great morning.